How to make a tray on a CNC. Trays, dishes, bowls, lots of options. So this video is going to walk you through all of these different styles, plenty of options, some tips on where to find designs, pre-made designs that are free or are pretty inexpensive, as well as some software tutorials on how to do your own designs. From adding decorative elements, epoxy inlay tips, different finish options, accessories for sanding, or tips how to minimize sanding. All kinds of goodies in this video. Notes on hardwoods, what woods to use, what woods are successful. So lots of info here. Be sure to use those timestamps if you're looking for something in particular, or if a certain section doesn't necessarily jive with your workflow or your shop setup. But great video here, how to make trays on the CNC. Check it out.
This video is sponsored by I2R, Imagination to Reality.
So first up, wood selection. When it comes to wood selection for these trays, I do recommend using a hardwood or hardwoods. It's harder, but it's going to resist those dents, those scratches. It's also tighter grain. It's going to resist that bacteria. It's just going to have some more longevity for you. You could use a softwood, your pines, your cedar, your firs. Just be aware, it's going to be not as strong. For more on these species, right, the different types of species, resources to learn more about the different types of wood, hardwoods especially, also where to find them. Where can you buy these woods? Where are some good deals? Check this video, Wood 101. I talk a lot more about the wood and hardwoods. But as far as these trays, a great option is just getting a nice single species. Sometimes you can find some really cool pieces like the Santos mahogany. That's this one right here. It's got this sapwood contrast. It's kind of a cool effect. Or you can just go for, some ash, some walnut, and just have that single color. It's a really good look as well. What's always great is to take scrap wood, scrap pieces of wood, whether it's some figured woods or the different colors, and just laminate them together to get a cool effect. Can make a big blank like this and do all kinds of things, or like this one can turn into something like this. And so I'm going to show a couple different options here. I have made some other videos that have some different styles. So if you see these pictures here, you can see we got a cool segmented ring on the top with different species. Have another one with a different color on top. So if you want to learn more about how to do these videos, check out a router tray video, router bowl video, where some more wood options. But when it comes to these woods, so many woods to choose from. But start with a hardwood, get your woods. But first up, if you want to go for this laminated effect, just real quick, a quick glue up, some tips on the glue up.
So first up, what you want to do is go ahead and rip your pieces down at the table saw. So whatever the thickness of your tray, your bowl, you would cut it that thick, and then you would flip it on its edge for your glue up. I go through all of these steps in much greater length and much greater detail in some of my other videos. My Cutting Board 101 video is all about getting a superior glue up. Like here, you're seeing I'm using Type-On 3, the clamps, how do I go about it? If you want some more on specifically the trays and bowls, my router bowl and my router tray videos talk a lot more about this step here. But Cutting Board 101 is a great place to go if you don't have as much woodworking knowledge or background with cutting boards and glue ups like this. How do you clamp it? How do you use the planer, or what other options are there for getting your initial glue up? But there you have it. We just really quick went over how to get to this point where you have a blank for your project. And of course, you don't have to do a glue up. You could just start with a piece of a single species like this black walnut here. It's a great look. Again, talked about all those different options for wood earlier. But once you have your wood ready, you go ahead and put it on the table and clamp it down. You do want to make sure it's nice and secure. Make sure it's flat as well before. So there's some other steps that might be necessary based on the wood you have. But here you can just see a quick little tray, nice and smooth. Just a really basic tray. It's actually really smooth, sands out really well. But you can see just in action, just a basic one, kind of a square dish. Of course, here's one of those glue up ones with the laminated different species. Really what you're doing is you're starting with the interior. You're cutting a pocket, and then after you've cut the pocket to whatever depth you want, then you're going to do a profile path. And so later in the video, I will talk with the software as far as some options for doing this and how you go about that. This basic idea here. You can see I do have some other clamps built in here. You just want to make sure it's nice and secure. Of course, it doesn't have to be a thick bowl, a thick tray. You can do thin trays like this. I have, a Christmas tree and a snowman. It's a more thin, candy dish or a catch-all is what we're going for here, but lots of options.
All right, really quick when I talk about bits, bit selection. For the most part, I'm going to be using a bowl and tray bit. It's a rounded edge, it gets a flat bottom, and then these corners get nice and rounded. So here you can see some finished pieces that we'll get to in the end. For the most part, it's not super big, right? 3/4 of an inch diameter. It's going to clean up most of your bowls. If you're going to do something that's a little bit more detailed on the inside, and I want to get all of that extra detail, I do recommend switching over to a downcut bit, whether it's a 1/4 inch, an 1/8 inch, right? I can really get in and get some extra detail work. But a downcut bit is going to give you a flat bottom. It's just going to be a cleaner look. But for the most part, you can just pull this off with just this bowl and tray bit. Links to all of these bits are down in the description, so check those out if so desired. You could do a ball nose bit as well for some more intricate work. Later in the video, I'll talk a little bit about adding a VCarve element, right? Adding some details. V-bit. This one is just a 90-degree V-bit that I used here, or some other decorative elements. And then when you're carving this out of a big piece, right? So if I have my piece here and I'm carving it out and it's still inside, I got my tabs, flush trim bit. Flush trim bit is great. I use this all the time, especially with CNC work. I see some other signs here. I'll use this to remove it. That's another great option. So a couple bits you'll see throughout the video, but slowing it down. Here's the bits. Check them down below. All right, next.
So here's another little carve using a piece of 2-inch ash, getting it nice and secure. And this is that one that you saw earlier in the video just now, that Daniel Tiger. And so I'm adding the dust shoe here for some dust collection. I'm starting off with that 3/4 inch rounded bottom bowl and tray bit. And that's just to clean out most of the material. However, this is a more intricate carve, and so that is possible. So I do switch out to a 1/4 inch downcut bit. And so there you can see the tail got cut. I have a little bit more detail. So doing multiple bits is certainly an option there. The one problem that can occur when you're doing a thicker piece like this is you can see there we got a nice little black ring. Well, that's because the dust shoe actually wrapped around the bit itself, and the heat of it moving just caused it to melt around the collet. So, that was, a delightful thing that I encountered. So if you're going with those really deep dishes, just be aware of that. How deep can you go? Well, it depends on your machine, but just be aware of that with the dust shoe. That could potentially happen. It all worked out just fine, but it does leave some of these black marks here, just a little bit more sanding later. All right, another option that you have if you're doing a tray and you want to add a decorative element. So here I have like a paw print, and I want to add a little bit more just so you can tell that it is a paw print, not kind of a blob. And so just a really subtle little look there. This is that downcut bit. Left a really clean little mark there. Another option here, I have a Seahawk candy tray that I made for myself. And go ahead and use a VCarve bit to write Go Hawks or whatever message you want. And you can just leave it as is, fill it with epoxy options. Here I have a mountain tray. And with this mountain tray, I went ahead and I added a little quote. The mountains are calling and I must go. Here I'm just showing how you can maximize your space, maximize your wood. That's one thing I love about the CNC is anytime you got wood clamped down, try and use as much as possible. So I mentioned you could fill it with epoxy. So when I do epoxy fills, I use Total Boat 2-to-1, slow hardener, links to all the stuff down below if so desired or interested. And once you mix it up, then you can add in some color. So adding some blue here, just mix it up, and then using a dental syringe, you can add it right where you want. Sometimes you do want to pre-finish and add some finish ahead of time so it doesn't bleed out. It just doesn't leach into the rest of the wood. But once you've done that, you do want to make sure you kill any bubbles, and a heat gun is a great way to just eliminate those bubbles. You could use a blowtorch, but heat gun works great. And there you have it. So at this point, you have all your pieces. They're kind of probably locked in place still with tabs I'll talk about how some other ways later, but that's the way I go about it. And I found the easiest way then is to take it over to the router table and use a flush trim bit. So this flush trim bit is amazing. It just works so well, and I just feel this is the most efficient and best way. You could remove the tabs with a multi-tool, but then you're still going to come back with a flush trim bit later. And so it follows the track so well. You know, 1/4 inch end mill was used earlier, so a 1/4 inch flush trim bit. This bit is awesome. It really is. So you clean it up. It's nice and clean, and it's really, you know, so many possibilities here. But at this point, you got a nice collection of trays, or if you're just doing a single tray, you got yourself your tray. Once you have your tray, I like to add my roundover at this point. So an edge profile, you could use a chamfer, whatever you know, edge profile you want to do. Roundovers are my go-to for these trays. I like to do an 1/8 inch, just subtle. But the one thing about the 1/8 inch is sometimes you got decorative elements like this tail. So this one I have is much thinner as opposed to a traditional one. So there are some really specialized bits that are thinner to get into all those nooks and crannies. So again, links to these down below if so interested. Then I do switch out to other router bits. So, you know, you can do a bigger roundover just based on the piece, whatever looks well, looks good, test it out, some different looks. You don't have to have a router table. You can just use a trim router. Here I have my little, you know, little DIY handle setup, but just go ahead and add your roundover at this point, pre-sanding. And so I get some good results that way. At this point, you want to clean up that epoxy. There's a lot of sanders that I actually use, and you'll see me use some different sanders here. Actually, I have a whole video just on specialty sanders you can check out. This is a pneumatic sander. It works really well. The one I love the best, though, is this contour sander by Arbortech. This is incredible. It just works really well. You got the power of an angle grinder. It just attaches to any angle grinder. You get all your grits. You can swap it out. It's really easy to change the sandpaper and the different grits. But what's great about it is it contours to the side and the angle, so it really cleans up any issues you have and just makes a perfectly smooth bottom. You can use it on the sides, but it's really flexible and it lasts well. So that's where I do at that point, and then I take it over to the bench top. So an oscillating bench top sander, you certainly don't need this. It just, if you got it, use it, make some quick work to clean up any of the lines from the end mill as it went through, make some quick work of it. So all about efficiency, great tool. You are going to just use that random orbital though. For my sanding progression, I like to start at 80 grit. So I do 80 grit, then I do 120, 150, then I raise the grain with water. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then I do 220, and then I do finish, and then I actually come back with 320 later. I'll talk about all those steps throughout the process. But go ahead and clean it up with your sander, get it nice and smooth. But one more specialty sander that really comes in handy are these little drum sleeves. It's great to put into your drill press. That way you're controlling the piece as opposed to the tool. You certainly could chuck this up in a handheld drill, but this works so great just to get all of the corners and the inside, the interior nice and smooth. It just saves you from doing too much hand sanding. So again, anyone who says there's a way to do these trays without sanding, it's bogus. You're still gonna have to do some sanding. Obviously you can minimize it, but this is a great tool. It works really, really well. Another one is just this quick little sanding mop to clean up any carves. It's a great one as well. All right, hand sanding. It's gonna happen. You're gonna have to do it. For me, I like to start hand sanding at 120. I don't go any lower because I feel there's too many marks. Just 120 hand sand, and then I do 120 with a random orbital. Then I do 150 hand sand, and so forth. But just really, hand sanding will elevate your piece, get it to where you want it to be. Raising the grain. So this is a crucial step for any piece that you plan on washing or come in contact with food. What happens is when the wood fibers get wet, it raises, they get all, rough. So if you have a spoon or a wooden spoon gets rough to the touch after time. So what you're doing here is you're intentionally raising the fibers of the wood. You're getting them to raise up. You don't want to go overboard. And then after everything gets nice and wet, you want to dry it all off. So it is important it doesn't get fully saturated. It's also important it doesn't dry too quickly. Don't dry this in direct sunlight or super hot because your piece could potentially warp on you. But you just want to get all of the wood fibers nice and wet, and then come back and sand at 220 is what I do, and then it's silky smooth, and if it ever gets washed, it's not going to be instantly rough to the touch. So this is a really crucial step to take before finish.
All right, let's talk wood finish. When it comes to finishes, there are so many options, way more than I could have pulled out, plenty of options. But really, you got to think about how you intend to use the product. So if your product is going to come in contact with food and you're going to be serving food, or if it's going to be washed on a regular basis, you do need to take into account a food-safe finish. Food-safe finishes, technically every finish, when it fully cures, is food-safe. However, if you plan to sell it, you do want to consider liability, so I recommend picking something that is labeled food grade. One product that I love to use is Walrus Oil's cutting board oil. It's got mineral oil with waxes built in, just some more protection. In this video, I'm going to be dunking most of these boards just in mineral oil, like with a cutting board, but then finishing with a wood wax. Food safe, it's great, easy for reapplication, especially if you plan to sell it. Other products like wood butter, there's other, butcher block conditioners, so kind of that mineral oil family. I did have another video that I did on making trays with just a router without a CNC, and in that video I used tried and true. This has beeswax, it's got linseed oil, but it's a food grade material. It's a little bit more to do it, but if you want to see how I applied this finish, check out that video. Recently, I did a bunch of cutting boards on the CNC with all sorts of unique juice grooves, and in that video, I used tung oil. So tung oil, really important that it's real tung oil, and then mixed it with a citrus solvent. This just adds a deeper penetration, and it lasts longer, and it's not going to, mineral oil, you do need to have to do more reapplication, and so there's less maintenance with this. It's a little bit more time intensive. Hard waxes, there's lots of hard waxes out there. I love Osmo, it's great stuff. It gives a good finish after a couple coats. You could just go with a poly. My favorite is Armor Seal. It's really like a wipe-on poly. It's thinned down. It's great. It's a lot more time because you're gonna have to sand in between coats to build it up. The other option that I'm gonna show in this video is for these small catch-alls and trays. Is just rattle can lacquer. So just spray lacquer, get this at Home Depot. You can find lots of different brands, but this is great for a quick project. It's probably not the best for food safe. I personally use it in our dishes at home, like a candy dish. I'm fine with that after it's cured. I probably wouldn't recommend it for something you're selling, but options. So plenty of options. So check out how I finish these boards with the oil and wax, as well as how I use the rattle can lacquer. If you don't need it, use those timestamps, skip ahead.
All right, the mineral oil bath. You don't have to have a big tub like this. It just works really well, less splatter. For the mineral oil, you do not need to submerge it and soak it overnight. The thing with mineral oil is it never evaporates, so it's just gonna absorb into the fibers of the wood, and then you want it to just kind of sit out, and whatever excess you have after like overnight or a day, dry that off. Now it's still gonna be leaking out some mineral oil for a couple days. Actually, probably a week or so, to be honest. So you don't want to overdo it. After it's dried, after you've dried it off, I come back and I sand at 320. So 320 hand sanding, then very lightly with a random orbital at 320. I just think it makes it a little bit smoother, and like again, that oil might have raised the grain a bit. Some people use synthetic steel wool for this. Just really nice and easy, just to make it super silky smooth. And then it's time for wax. So wood wax, I think, is crucial. And so what I do is I like to use the heat gun. It just melts it, makes it a little bit easier to apply. It also is gonna penetrate the wood fibers that much more. This Walrus Oil wood wax is amazing stuff. I really recommend it. I do make my own sometimes, but I just love their product. I just have seen better results, gives a great luster. But you just apply it, nice thin coats, don't overdo it. And then after you've let it sit out, then you want to buff it all in. So buff it in, some shop towels, get up the excess, just make sure it absorbed everywhere. And then there are some tools to help with buffing, optional ones. This is a really cheap, it's a 20-buck little kit with a bunch of these different attachments. Again, you can do it at the drill press, or you could put it in a drill, a handed drill. This just works really well for buffing, making it nice and smooth. Lots of different attachments. I've used these a lot. I've used these for quite a few batches and really like them. Okay, spray lacquer. Spray lacquer is really easy. It's super easy to apply. You want to do really light coats. So light coats, do not go too heavy. And I like to do about 5 to 7 coats just to build up those coats, light coats, build it up, build it up, build it up. And then once I've done, like my 7th coat, I need to come back and you need to knock down any of those fibers. So I sand at 400 grit right here, and I just want to remove any, of the dust particles that might have settled. You don't have to sand in between each coat. I just do this towards the end before the last coat. Then clean it up with a shop towel, or even better, a tack cloth. So tack cloth, it's sticky and it just picks up everything. You really don't want to have any of that dust because then your finish isn't going to be as smooth. So clean it up, use the tack cloth or a shop towel, whatever. You got rid of it all, and then just add that one more coat. And this is just silly on the workbench, right? This isn't me actually doing it here. Well, I mean, I'm doing it, but you get the idea. Anyway, this is great for these candy dishes or like catch-alls, small trays. I think that's a great option, a great finish option. So plenty of options. Okay, there it is. So here's one with the VCarve, the engraving. There you can see the one that had the epoxy and all the different pieces. So some have that oil and wax, some have the other finish, but so many different possibilities here. You can see, there's so many great ideas online of different styles of these trays people have done, whether it's for food or serveware, just loads of idea. Really fun, awesome project, lots of possibilities.
All right, trays, bowls, they're awesome, they're beautiful. Some final tips and software tutorial. Quick tutorial if you're looking for some of that toolpath action with VCarve. If you want to see how easy it is, stay tuned, that's coming up. But first, I want to thank I2R for making this video possible. Here's a quick shout out for I2R.
Huge thanks to I2R for making this video happen, by sending me the machine and sponsoring this video. And so really, I just want to talk about why I think they're a fantastic company and a great machine. Some really cool things, right? Lifetime US customer service. I've received, great customer service. Had one little issue early on, and it was actually my fault, but they helped me right away. There's a one-on-one onboarding call. They're so helpful getting started. If you're new to CNCs, they really help. But it's really a robust machine. The machines themselves are just fantastic. They can handle so much, and they're fantastic. So this one right here, B24, that's the unit I have. So the one you saw in the video with all my CNC projects, it's a 2 foot by 4 foot. I actually have the 110 volt 1 horsepower option, but lots of options online, lots of great products, some really informative things on the website. So check out their website, give them a look, some great promotions all the time as well. But awesome, I2R, thanks. So for our tutorial, I am using VCarve Pro. This is VCarve Pro 11, and I'm just going to walk you through a bunch of different options for doing the software. So for this piece, I'm just going to say it's a 12-inch by 12-inch piece, an 1.5 inch thick for my material, and I'm good to go. Now within VCarve, there's a lot of great options for drawing your own style. I could just go straight to a circle. Pretty easy to just go ahead and draw a circle for your outside, and you can draw another circle for your interior. Lots of great features within Vectric. Let's see. Didn't quite line it up, so I can go ahead and use the centering tool, make sure everything is nice and centered, and then I got myself, a rim. I could clean out the inside for a pocket, and then I could have, a rim on the outside, got a nice little border there, so I could make a dish just pretty easily like that. Lots of other options, right? I can do the line tool, the star tool, plenty of things within Vectric to get started right away. Another option is actually over in clip art. So if I click on clip art, the 2D vectors, there's a lot of great shapes in here that are already built in. You don't even have to go look for them. I could do a heart, just drag a heart on over, whether it's Valentine's Day or just whatever. A heart with purple heart. I know, I couldn't help myself, sorry. But some other really cool shapes. I actually used a couple. you'll see. But importing a bitmap is a great option as well. So you just search for something online, like, oh, I found this Christmas tree outline, and I can just import this. This is just a normal, JPEG file, but I need to create some vectors. So what I'm going to do is I've selected the picture. And then I need to come on over and I need to trace the bitmap. So black and white is best. Color does work. And just go ahead and click preview, apply, and we have ourselves some vectors. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the image. I just need the vectors. This particular one looks like it has two layers. I'm going to just ungroup it and delete one of them. All right, so we got ourselves a tree, an outline. It's nice. One thing you want to do here, what I recommend doing is clicking on the image and making a special boundary, right? Instead of copying and pasting, if I copied and pasted, it wouldn't be exactly to scale. It would look a little bit off. So I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to come on over, and I'm going to click Boundary Create. And so what this does is this gives me a great little rim, whether I want to do 3/4 of an inch, half an inch, whatever I want to do, it just instantly creates it. And it's nice and soft corners, which is great for trays and bowls. And I have everything I need. So now I got one for the pocket, and I could, go over, add my tool path, and I'm going to do a pocket tool path. So for this, you can go ahead and select your bit. For this one is that bit I talked about earlier in the video. It's just right on down here. You can find all the tools, tool libraries from the manufacturer database, whether it's Amana, Speed Tool, Spay Tool, whatever. All of them, white side bits. But I do want to adjust the number of passes. My machine can handle a little bit more. You want to be careful, right? Of course, test this out. What can your machine handle? So I'm just going to, model. Okay, I'm going to drop it down. This is how many passes. I think my machine can handle this just fine. Again, based on your machine, according to your machine, all of that. Don't destroy your piece or your machine. As far as the depth, I'm going to go ahead and just, you can do whatever depth you want, but I do recommend as you are carving out your piece, consider the overall dimensions and how thick your piece is, and so how much you want on the bottom. And so as far as do I want 1/4 inch on the bottom or how much? So think about it. All right, so I have it, and I'm going to go ahead and preview what it looks like. And there you have it. So nice little tray. Of course, you can mess around with that, but there you have it. With this this tray option, I can go in to that toolpath. So let's edit that toolpath. I've actually already done this, so when I click on my actual tool, you'll see I've already changed the step over to 15%. The manufacturer, it's closer to 35 or 40. Basically, the lower the step over rate is, right, the less times it's going to have less ridges. Essentially, it's going to make it smoother on the bottom. So you can mess around with this. There's some great videos online that talk about this. They're going to claim never sound a CNC machine. Anyway, they really can't eliminate the sanding, like I said earlier, but changing the step over rate, if you want to do a second toolpath, it can help. So this is something to look into if you're having issues and you have ridges on the bottom. All right, next you want to do the outside, the profile. So this is going to be a profile cut. I'm using a 1/4 inch end mill, and here we go. So for this one, I want to make sure, yeah, there we go, profile. I'm going to go ahead and click on it, and I want to do the full depth. So my piece is 1.5 inches, got my full depth. I want to have a 1/4 inch end mill, but again, I don't need to have 1,000 passes. My machine can handle a little bit more. Want to add some tabs. So like I showed earlier, I like to add tabs. That's how I do it. I'm just going to go ahead and click some on some of the straight places right here, and it cleans up really nicely with the flush trim bit. Go ahead and calculate, see what it looks like, and there you can see all the different lines, how many passes it would be. Let's go ahead and actually preview it so we can see. All right, so that's what it looks like. You can see those tabs there. And that's pretty much it. So yet another way to do it. Just a quick little video to get you started, quick tutorial. Lots of other great videos out there for the software.
Well, there you have it, CNC trays. If this video provided value to you, please consider subscribing to see more videos like this, whether it is CNC projects like so or traditional woodworking projects. Again, a huge thanks to I2R for making this possible. I've had this machine for close to a year now. All kinds of good stuff coming out of it, more projects coming. But again, all kinds of content coming your way. So subscribe to see more. If you're curious about any of the accessories I used, any of the tools, links to most of those down below in the video description. But yeah, if you have any tips of your own, maybe a website or tips on where to find other designs, bit selection, anything like that, feel free to share in the comment section for others who come to this video, and maybe I can incorporate in future videos as well. But thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.